They were very loving people. They wanted to share all their love with as many children as they could.
You got these two individuals killed execution style.
It's shocking that someone would be shot right in front of their own kids in their own home.
What did you think when you heard that pow, 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 pow? I thought, oh, dear God, no.
They had 16 cameras, and they were all working.
You see them kick in the front door, back door at the same time.
Just doesn't make sense because they got what they wanted, so why kill them?
The camera really tells the tale.
It was almost silence when we're watching it and seeing it. We couldn't believe what we were watching.
Summer 2009, Pensacola, Florida. Bud and Melanie Billings are enjoying life with the big, loving family they've made for themselves.
They had a couple of their own children, and they adopted many children. They just wanted to have a large family, whatever way they could swing it.
I believe they are the modern life Brady Bunch, honestly. They adopted a lot of special needs kids, and they loved them a lot. If they could, they would adopt every child in the world.
Before the Billings became Pensacola's modern-day Brady Bunch, they were just Bud and Melanie.
Bud was a fixture in the used car business.
So Bud is this hard-charging businessman. He was an entrepreneur. He had many businesses. He had a lot of money, and he wanted a large family. The bigger, the better. Then he meets Melanie, who is the softer side of him.
Bud used to own a club in town. Melanie was a waitress there, and they madly fell in love. He eventually sold the club and got heavier in the used car business, which is where Bud really was making his money.
With Bud's career on the rise, the couple decide to marry in 1993.
Melanie was great. She kind of smoothed off the edges of Bud. He deeply loved her.
Bud and Melanie have two children from previous marriages, but they're not done yet.
He wanted to take care of children, and it was like in his soul. So adoptions ensued. And Bud and Melanie actually ended up with 13 children.
Melanie developed a passion for helping these kids, and these kids were very much a part of their lives.
They just were very loving people, honestly. They just wanted to share all their love with as many children as they could.
You have money and you are adopting these special needs children, and that gains a lot of attention because of, you know, it's a good deed, obviously, but also it's kind of unusual.
By 2009, the Billings have 9 children in their home, ranging in age from 4 to 11. Their 2 oldest children from previous marriages, Melanie's daughter Ashley and Bud's son Justin, are grown but live in the area. They decide to share the story of their big, loving family with their community.
Our daily newspaper did a big profile on the Billings family. There were some wonderful pictures of Bud and Melanie and all this litter of kids, some laying and some in their laps, and all ages and sizes. And the whole story was just about how big their hearts were. This photo is the last photo of the family. And just, you can't look at that picture and not feel something for this family.
At 7 p.m. on July 9th, 2009, the Billings are home. Most of their children are in bed.
Bud is with one of their kids watching television. His Billings' wife is in a kitchen. It was one of those kitchens that had sort of a counter that she could look into the living room area. So she's cleaning dishes, they're watching TV.
Bud and Melanie Billings have no idea that these seemingly mundane chores will be their final moments together.
Their eldest daughter, Ashley, calls the house to see how the family's doing. It's like 7:30 at night. One of the children answers the phone, and the child is crying.
The Billings had a nurse that helped part-time at the home. Her name was April Spencer.
Worried that she can't get her parents to come to the phone, Ashley calls April and asks her to go to the Billings house and check on Bud and Melanie and their children.
Sheriff's Department, Debbie.
I live next door. The mother and father have been shot.
They've been shot?
Yes. Please come.
I'm trying to get somebody this. You said the mother and father both have been shot?
Yes. I gotta go over here with the children, but I don't know.
I don't want you to be in any danger, okay? I've got several officers on the way to you.
Hurry. I gotta go get the kids. There's kids in the house.
Home security video reveals a key clue to the Billings killers.
The first thing that comes to mind when you see that red van is we're going to be able to find that.
And find a tangled web of conspirators.
They're all in complete black. They look like ninjas.
She's very successful, and somehow she's involved with these ninja characters.
So now we're stuck with trying to figure out all these players and how to prove it.
And it doesn't make any sense. Why would you get yourself involved in this?
So you said the mother and father both have been shot?
July 9th, 2009. A frantic 911 sends police rushing to the home of Bud and Melanie Billings in Pensacola, Florida.
We got dispatch telling us that we needed to respond to a double murder. At that time, we didn't know much about it. We didn't know if maybe suicide or what we had. I pull up and I see probably half of our patrol deputies on scene, lights everywhere.
It was sort of surreal because they're carrying babies and toddlers and all different type of ages outside. Just that eeriness of how many kids were in that house and trying to get them out.
There's 8 to 13 kids that we're dealing with. We learned right away the majority of them were nonverbal. It was difficult getting anything out of them. So after the kids were safe with an Annie, we started to walk through the crime scene. Right away, you notice the door been kicked in, that it was forced open. You see some blood right there in the living room. And then to the far right is the bedroom. And you see Mr. and Miss Billings on the floor inside the bedroom.
Based on the initial forensics noted at the scene, it quickly becomes clear to detectives that this is not a murder-suicide.
You know, you got these 2 individuals killed almost execution style. When you see that, that's when we knew it's going to be different. I mean, you know right away that you're dealing with either robbery or home invasion, something in that nature.
When the Billings' daughter, Ashley, arrives at the scene, she points officers to something inside the house that could help them get some answers.
There were cameras all over the place. They had 16 cameras, and they were all working.
The reason they had the video system there was to keep an eye on all these special needs kids that they didn't hurt themselves.
Detectives rush the video equipment back to their tech team at headquarters, hopeful it will hold the answers to what happened in Bud and Melanie's final moments.
We had to actually pull the hard drive. It had to be pulled and brought back to the sheriff's office to be viewed.
Meanwhile, forensics teams continue through the night processing the bloody scene for physical evidence.
There wasn't a lot of evidence left by these killers because they really covered their tracks except for the shell casings. And then also, there were some shoe prints because one of the doors had been kicked in and they found some boot prints outside the house.
Investigators send the physical evidence for processing and return to the sheriff's office, where they are at last able to access the video from the Billings home security system.
When we finally start viewing the video, it's clear as day. You see this red van pull up. You see these people jump out.
You had 5 individuals moving across the yard. They're all in complete black shoes, shirts, and masks. So they look like ninjas.
It was almost, when we're watching it, we couldn't believe what we were watching. Then you see them kick in the front door, back door at the same time. It's not something that we had ever seen.
The surveillance footage tells a stunning story about what happened inside the house.
You could tell it's obviously planned, military style, long guns, handguns.
You see Bud immediately puts his hands up.
And he's trying to talk to these killers that have come into his home with his kids and his wife.
Then you have 2 other masked men come in from down the hallway.
So the men that finally rush into the room, they get Bud and they zip tie him and they push him to the floor.
Within minutes of getting Bud on the floor, one of the guys shoots him twice, 1 in each leg, in the meaty part of the calf. Drag him, into the master bedroom, drag Melanie into the master bedroom.
Mr. Billings didn't have video in his bedroom, so we didn't see them being killed.
Investigators rewind the video again and again, scouring it for clues. And they spot something they didn't notice earlier.
We see there's a little boy in the living room. This little 6, 7, 8-year-old kid watching and seeing his family get killed. It was horrible.
The child, he was with his dad when the men broke into the house. He wasn't in the bedroom, but he actually saw his dad being shot. He saw his mom being dragged. The gang pretty much just ignored him, while this was all going on, and immediately doing what they were doing.
I've covered a lot of murders, and this one is the most shocking because it's basically caught on camera, memorializing the final moments of the Billings lives. And all the children are there. It's so unnerving, and it's just sad, but also it's something you can't unsee. And then after that, you can see the ninja invaders quickly leaving the house.
You see them getting into the van with an object. But it was hard to tell from the video what they were carrying out of the house.
This whole thing happened in less than 10 minutes.
So police are trying to figure out, is this just simply a home invasion and people that want money? Or why did this go down?
Home security video has captured chilling details of the murders of Bud and Melanie Billings in front of their children. Investigators believe the key to understanding may lie in the unidentified object the killers are seen fleeing with on the blurry video.
In the early moments of the investigation, we were thinking that it was a robbery.
The video answers a lot of questions, but not the most important ones.
So you have this great video of showing exactly what happened, but you couldn't distinguish any type of facial features or anything like that. And we didn't know what they took.
Investigators continue trying to decipher the clues contained in the home security video. They need to know exactly what was taken from the Billings home, why, and most importantly, by whom. So they speak to those closest to Bud and Melanie, their oldest children, Justin and Ashley.
Typically in a homicide, they're going to go first to the people that are closest. So they're going to go find out where all the family members were, get their interviews done quickly.
We found out through Ashley. There was 2 different safes in the house. The small safe was in his bedroom in a bedroom closet. And there was another safe upstairs.
And one of those safes is now missing.
So when we put the whole thing together, you see him carrying what we know now is the small safe put into the red van, and you see everybody leaving. In that safe, Ashley had told us there's like birth certificates, adoption paperwork, stuff of that nature for all these kids. Some minor jewelry of her mom's, but not a lot.
So Ashley tells police, look, they got away with a safe, but the other safe that's in the house is the one with the cash.
There was a lot of money being made with the used car business.
So in the safe upstairs, there was like 100 to 200,000, something like that, worth of cash inside.
They took the wrong one.
They had no clue about the second safe, and I just think it was a little bit of ignorance.
Investigators still have no leads to the identities of the home invaders. They hope one comes from their most promising clue, the red van seen on the security video.
The first thing that comes to mind when you see that red van is, we're going to be able to find that.
We got that video of the red van put out on media. I mean, right away.
As police work on finding the killers, the Billings family is faced with another urgent task, taking care of the children who are now left orphaned. Ashley, Melanie's oldest daughter from her previous marriage, rises to the challenge.
She's taking care of all the kids.
That's a big responsibility, but those kids need someone that's close to them and that knows what they need.
With no new leads on the red van or the identity of its occupants. The evidence points to a robbery gone bad. But with a safe full of cash left behind and the 2 brazen murders, detectives begin to wonder if something bigger is at play.
In the South, you don't speak ill of the dead until they're buried. So my thought was, okay, once we get the funerals over with, somebody's going to come forward. And sure enough, my theory turned out to be right. We started hearing that Bud was a great friend, but he never got the wrong side of a business deal. The stories that we were getting were the people that had used car lots with them. He would find a successful salesperson. He would help them finance the cars, but then when the sales start to fall off, he didn't hesitate to take the whole lot from them. And there were stories of him coming in the middle of the night, taking all the keys, moving all the cars in the lot, and the guy going back to work to a lot he thought he had with no cars.
Might Bud Billings have crossed the wrong man?
So there was a question whether this was just purely to burglarize the Billings, or was there some other motive behind this? Was it a hit? Was there a revenge motive to this?
We appreciate you coming in.
Well, anything to help.
Bud's adult son, Justin, sometimes worked with his dad on his auto lots. As police interview him about the murders, he provides some intriguing details about his father's business dealings.
And when the police spoke to Justin, he gave a name, a key to why this might have all gone down.
During the interview with Justin, he brings up Cab Tice. He said, hey, this is a guy you might want to look at. Him and my dad have had issues in the past, and you might want to check him out.
Cab Tice ran several car dealerships. He had a flair for liking Hawaiian shirts. He tanned.
Justin tells investigators that his father had a business dispute with Cab Tice, and Bud had accused Cab of stealing from him.
My dad was disappointed in him for stealing from him. I mean, he said if you needed money, you could have just asked. You didn't have to steal it from me. And Cab just stormed out.
So we start looking into Cab Tice. We wind up going out there and making contact with Cab, and he made it clear that he had no use for Mr. Billings. It kept just getting more interesting in every turn.
Two days after the murders of Bud and Melanie Billings, Bud's son Justin has given police the name of a potential suspect, Cab Tice.
The story was he and Bud had a falling out. Bud would finance his lot, and Cab would sell cars and not give Bud his share of the money. If anybody had something against Bud Billings, it was Cab Tice.
Mr. Billings felt like Cab owed him money. They were not friendly at all. It was clear. So when we started to talk to Mr. Tice, he was very frank.
In business, Bud Billings wouldn't give you a dime unless you got 29 cents back.
Said, hey, I don't like the guy. I have no use for him. And I'm going to be honest with you, I'm not sad that he's gone.
Bud Billings' favorite statement was this, and as you interview people, he'll say, you know what, over these years, I had so much cash that I could not spend it before I died. And when this whole thing happened, those words rang in my ear, I have more cash, and I think we robbed.
Detectives think Cab Tice could have a motive to go after Bud. They press him to provide an alibi for the night of the murders, and he tells them he was working at a dealership an hour and a half outside of Pensacola that evening.
And we showed you a picture of this van right here, right?
Yes, sir. I've never seen that van.
You've never seen that van?
No, sir.
With no evidence that he committed any crime, police have no cause to hold Cab.
We let him go, letting him know that we had to follow up, checking his alibi and verify everything that he said.
Despite their initial suspicions, detectives are able to corroborate Cab's alibi. The case seems to be losing momentum. But then, investigators' strategy of asking for the public's help finding the red van seen at the Billings home finally pays off.
Somebody calls up and says, hey, I know this van. I once owned it and I sold it.
And I sold it to Patrick Gonzalez. Investigators go to the ad Mr. Gonzalez they had found in our computer database.
They drive by the house. Lo and behold, there's this van peeking out behind the trailer. They go, and it looks like the one that is in the video.
And it's just sitting there.
So police bring Patrick Gonzalez to the police station for questioning.
So he tells the investigator that the van doesn't run, hasn't moved in a while, that it's his son's, Gonzalez Jr.'s.
So police have two suspects, and they both have the same name. One is Junior, Leonard Patrick Gonzalez Sr., and then Leonard Patrick Gonzalez Jr.
Detectives continue to press Patrick Gonzalez Sr. about the red van, when suddenly he crumbles.
Patrick Gonzalez Sr. tells the police that, hey, I was just the driver. He spilled the beans on everything.
Okay. You pull in the driveway, what happens?
Everybody jumps in, doors kicking open. Please, on the ground.
Okay. All right.
And that's all I thought it would be.
He just basically spills his guts that it's his son, Patrick Jr., who masterminded the whole thing, and it's all his fault. I was just the getaway driver.
He said his son kind of brought him into this. A father and son kind of escapade. You know, instead of going fishing, we're going to go commit a robbery.
He talks about, being told about this being a drug dealer, that nobody was going to care if they robbed this guy. And he was shocked when he heard the gunshots go off in the house, and pretty much lays out the whole crime.
You said you were still in the van. What did you do next?
Got in the driver's seat.
Uh-huh. And then what happens after that?
We get down in the yard, everything's going fine, and then all of a sudden, out.
Okay.
What'd you think when you heard that pow, 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 pow?
I liked it on myself. I thought, oh dear God, no.
Based on his confession, Patrick Gonzalez Sr. is charged with being an accomplice.
Senior tells us everything that happened, but he doesn't know all the names of the other guys. So now we're stuck with trying to figure out all these players and how to prove it.
Police have traced the red van used in the murders of Bud and Melanie Billings to Patrick Gonzalez Sr. He admits to being at the scene, but insists his son is the mastermind behind the deadly robbery.
So as we started investigating Gonzalez Jr., we learned that him and Bud Billings were friends and knew each other.
They knew each other in the car business. Patrick Jr. would work at different car lots. They would do these big tent sales, and he'd be one of the army of salespeople that would do that.
Because of what they have on Patrick Jr. from his father, they bring him in for an interrogation.
Investigators do not immediately reveal what Patrick Gonzalez's father has told them.
We appreciate you coming here today.
Believe me, when I saw the pictures on TV, I was like, damn, and I know the guy, so I'm thinking.
You know what guy?
The guy that this is about. So I was like,
You saw the picture of the van on TV?
Yeah.
Man, that's your van.
Excuse me?
That picture is the same van that's in your yard, right?
It's similar. Similar. Very similar to that van, but no, it's not. It can't be the same van. It's not the same van.
He denies everything, and he tells us his dad's mentally crazy. Don't listen to nothing he says.
Detectives believe Patrick Sr.'s story. Patrick Gonzalez Jr. is their prime suspect, but they have to find proof that he was involved.
We had enough probable cause to keep Senior. We didn't have enough probable cause to keep Junior, so then we got to keep following up. We got to get enough evidence to prove his dad's story.
That includes doing a deep dive into Patrick Jr.'s background.
Patrick Jr., he had spent some time in prison with a battery charge, an assault charge, and he had come out. He was very proficient in martial arts, had done some MMA fighting. Patrick had gone to Bud to get money to help with the studio that he had, the martial arts studio that he started, and Bud was not interested in investing in his business.
Investigators believe they have discovered a possible explanation for why the robbery turned so inexplicably deadly. Could Patrick Jr. have been so angry at Bud for not investing in his studio that he wanted him dead? Police execute a search warrant at Patrick Gonzalez Sr.'s property, where the red van was located.
The search warrant at Senior's house was incredibly huge. It helps tie things together. We wind up getting paint cans where they were trying to paint the vehicle, some burned stuff like that. We wind up getting a shoebox from Walmart.
So the shoebox is significant because the bottom of those boots match the pattern of the shoe prints found at the Billings house after the double murder.
Detectives head to Walmart and find surveillance footage matching the date and time on a receipt found with the shoeboxes. And on it, they see Patrick Jr. with a group of men police believe is the robbery crew.
Well, all of them are on the video at Walmart, where we see him buying clothing and shoes for the group that he had recruited.
Prosecutors feel they now have enough to arrest Patrick Gonzalez Jr. When they release the Walmart video to the public, tips help them identify and arrest the other 5 men.
They Gonzalez Jr. through a mechanic shop. So he winds up talking them into going into this house and robbing it because this guy's got tons and tons of money in his safe.
Police arrest Wayne Coldiron, Donnie Stallworth, Gary Sumner, Rakeem Florence, and Frederick Thornton. But pieces of the puzzle are still missing.
They had arrested a lot of people, but they didn't have the guns, they didn't have the safe.
Detectives continue interrogating their suspects, probing for leads to the guns and safe. And as they do, they hear about a mysterious woman who may be the key to that information.
Pamela Long Wiggins, she's blonde, she's a real estate agent, very successful, has a lot of money, and somehow she's involved with these ninja characters.
We wind up finding out that she's rents to Gonzalez Jr., a home in Gulf Breeze, Florida. He would collect money for her if people were giving her a hard time, not paying up, kick them out of homes, stuff of that nature. So that was their connection.
Police learn from their suspects that after the murders, Patrick Gonzalez Jr. met with Pamela, but then she disappeared. Detectives managed to track Pamela down just in time.
She was trying to leave and wound up locating her in a big yacht or boat that they had in Orange Beach, Alabama. When we get Pamela Long Wiggins back to the sheriff's office, she doesn't want to speak with us without an attorney.
But then they get an unexpected visit from Pamela's husband, Hugh, looking to cut a deal for himself.
Hugh Wiggins was not on our radar at all. So we're like, this case just gets crazier and crazier. And he actually spills all the beans. He sells his wife under the bus.
The first question we have is, where is the safe?
Do you want me to tell you, or do you want me to take you to it?
I want you to tell me at this point.
Well, first of all, I don't know for a fact that it's there. I was just told that it was there.
Who told you?
Pam told me.
Hugh had cut an immunity deal with the state attorney's office. And he told them where the guns could be found, where the safe was. That was sort of a turning point in this investigation.
Faced with her husband's betrayal, Pamela admits to taking the guns and safe. She tells detectives she got her marching orders from Patrick Gonzalez Jr.
Okay. He said, if we do the job, won't be in trouble. And I let him talk me into it.
I didn't hear you.
And I let him talk me into doing this.
Pamela Wiggins is charged with accessory after the fact. The rest of the crew are charged with murder and armed home invasion. As investigators continue to interrogate them, they all point the finger at Patrick Gonzalez Jr. as the man who turned that night deadly.
Because he's the one who pulls the trigger.
They explained that when they come in the front door that it's Gonzalez Jr. right away. When the first shot goes out, they're shocked, and they tell us that Gonzalez Jr. shot them both while they were in the bedroom.
Gonzalez Jr. told this tale of how we're going to rob these drug dealers and this bad guy, and there's millions and millions of dollars.
It was only supposed to be a robbery, and they were pissed because that is not what was supposed to happen.
Prosecutors in Patrick Gonzalez Jr.'s murder case are preparing for what they know will be a closely watched trial. It's one of the most high-profile cases in Pensacola's history.
I think that what was a challenge in this case was that you want to make sure that no stone goes unturned to make sure we obtain justice. It's a death penalty case.
Leonard Patrick Gonzalez Jr.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Gonzalez, you've been arrested on charges of homicide and home invasion and robbery with a firearm.
In October 2010, the trial of Patrick Gonzalez Jr. for the murders of Bud and Melanie Billings begins. Prosecutors have plenty of evidence that he wanted the Billings money.
I think that Gonzalez Jr. believed that there was a treasure trove at that house.
But they can't explain why he wanted them dead.
So the big question that still hangs in the balance is, why were the Billings killed? It just doesn't make sense because they got what they wanted. They got a safe. So why kill the parents?
It was supposed to be just a simple robbery, people needing money. I really am not sure what was in Gonzalez's mind, but I think if you watch the video and surveillance video and you see it, as quickly as he shot him when he come in that door, I think, in my opinion, he had full intentions of killing him as soon as he come in that door. He comes in the door and shoots him right away.
Patrick Gonzalez won't provide any answers about his motive. He maintains his innocence and declines to testify. But the state has another powerful weapon. As part of a plea deal, 2 of the crew members, Rakeem Florence and Frederick Thornton, have agreed to testify to their involvement in the murders.
We walked Florence and Thornton through the video, and they would say, "That's me. That's this. This is this person." It became alive through them. So you brought almost a color commentary right there from the guys who were inside the house. I think it worked effectively. The video was the overwhelming piece of evidence that sealed the fate of all these folks. The video cannot be cross-examined. It puts the people where they're at. It is the crime.
On October 28, 2010, the jury finds Patrick Gonzalez Jr. guilty of murder and armed home invasion robbery.
A judge ultimately, after sentencing hearings, sentenced him to death.
The other members of the deadly crew all receive heavy prison sentences, ranging from 20 years to life. Both Patrick Gonzalez Sr. and Pamela Wiggins die behind bars.
As a human being, you just have to look at the senseless nature of it. Just absolutely senseless violence that has inexorably changed people's lives by virtue of just mere greed. Senseless greed. And that's the thing that really saddens you, because, you know, in many ways, all these people were drawn in for greed, and then a senseless double murder takes place. Families are torn apart. Both sides of the equation are forever changed by this.
Family was a
That was basically my home. My parents had all the knickknacks from like games to movies. It was basically a playground. I absolutely loved it. I hear 4 loud shots.
Someone is a robber or a pumpkin?
Does he have a gun?
Yes, he's got my pen.
I remember it coming over the radio, kind of in disbelief. Michael got along with everybody. He was on the good side of everybody.
Between you and me, brother, they were crooked people.
He had a large sum of money. Really, anybody could have followed him and figured out where he was going to be and when.
Maybe everyone else in there was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
September 20th, 2013, Danville, Kentucky. As dawn breaks, Michael and Angie Hockenmith arrive at the pawn shop they manage. ABC Gold Games and more. Their baby daughter Naomi and 9-year-old son Andrew in tow.
The pawn shop, that was basically my home. We had all the knickknacks of a pawn shop, from like games to movies to all sorts of junk. It was basically a playground. Yeah, I absolutely loved it. It was simply amazing.
The Hockenmiths are always together, even on school days.
My mom was determined to educate me in a home setting.
When they first started to homeschool Andrew, they put homeschool in the middle of everything. So when Michael worked at the pawn shop, Angie would help him with things at the pawn shop. So Andrew would go in there, he would sit and study. He had his own little desk and everything. And they were always trying to spend time together.
The Hockenmith family story starts a decade earlier, when Michael, working as a youth pastor in central Kentucky, meets a young woman as dedicated to her faith as he is.
He met Angie. And I think they got stuck together and they stayed that way. It's kind of like you didn't see one without the other.
Before long, Michael and Angie marry, and the family doubles in size.
Michael was on cloud 9. He just loved the idea that they would have a boy and a girl, and that their life would be complete.
My dad, he made things look so easy, and he was truly an amazing person. He would have a crowd of people, and he'd just be talking to somebody about something, and then he would just pick me up by the leg and throw me up in the air. And everybody'd be like, don't drop him. But he never dropped me. He always caught me by the leg and just put me down. My mom, of course, she was the pastor's wife. And so that's a big role to take. She was also a very sociable person, lovable person. She would always make friends with anyone and everyone.
He'd go preaching. Angie, she would sing. She constantly sang.
We went from church to church to church. It was simply amazing.
The family's journey eventually leads them to Danville, Kentucky in 2013.
They found a church here in Danville that they wanted to attend or get involved in. And when it comes to him in church, him being a parent, or anything he did, his whole heart or nothing.
Michael puts that same level of dedication into the part-time job he takes at a pawn shop to support the family while he preaches. Steve Devine, the owner of the pawn shop, quickly makes Michael a partner and lets him take over running the business.
He'd been working there for, maybe a year and a half before they opened the store that morning.
The morning of September 20th, 2013 starts out like any typical day. By 9 a.m., the pawn shop is open for business.
Once my dad got started, I did my own thing. I grabbed me a game system of some sort and started playing.
Within 15 minutes of opening, a regular customer enters the store.
The gold man, Dan Smith, came in.
Dan Smith, like Michael Hockenmith, is a part-time pastor. He makes his money buying and selling gold at pawn shops and jewelry stores.
They was both at the desk conversating, dealing with money and whatnot.
Michael and Dan are haggling. Angie is rocking baby Naomi near the register. Andrew is testing out a video game. It's a routine morning. None of them are aware that these will be their final moments together.
Shortly after, this guy, he came in as well. And I was like, he's kind of weird looking. He starts to pull out a gun and kind of raises his voice a little bit and says, "Be on the ground." And we all did because we was petrified. Me, Mom, and my sister all huddled up to a corner.
Andrew hears strange, high-pitched sounds as he watches the unthinkable. A man shooting at his mother, father, and Dan.
For me, it sounded like a dart gun. Dad was like, "Please stop." So that happened, and he started rolling around until he wasn't. He stopped. But then Dan Smith was next, and then he was going to go after us. And my mom, she told me, to go in the back with my sister. So I do. I crawl all the way back to the office, and I sit my sister on the couch. I'm sitting right beside her. Of course, shaken up and don't even know what's going on. I hear 4 loud shots. And I remember crawling over to the doorway and seeing that my mom was just laying there with a puddle of blood, big puddle of blood. And so I picked up the phone and called on it.
911, where's your emergency?
Someone is a robber at a pawn shop.
Someone's robbing the pawn shop?
And my parents got shot.
Where is the robber?
He's right here right now.
Investigators catch haunting glimpses of a calculating killer.
We were starting to get these little clips of the silver minivan circling the area.
You can tell the van is kind of waiting. The way the whole crime played out, I think that it could be something professional.
And hear the voice of the man who may be responsible for a triple murder.
Oh, nobody, none of this, because what does it make me look like? It makes me look like the perpetrator, see?
My parents got shot.
Where is the robber?
He's right here right now.
9-year-old Andrew Hockenmith makes a desperate 911 call as he hides with his baby sister in the back of his family's pawn shop after an armed robber opened fire on his parents and their customer.
The robber, does he have a gun?
Yes. He shot my parents.
Okay, can he see you?
I'm in the back right now.
You're in the back? So the robber's up front of the store?
Yes, but I don't know if he's here or not. But come quickly.
Where are your parents?
They're dead on the ground. Come here quickly because I'm afraid. Please hurry.
Okay, they're coming, okay?
I was just sitting there with my sister and hoping to God that these police come.
Danville Police Detective A.J. Mullins is one of the first to respond.
I remember it coming over the radio, kind of in disbelief. Is that what I really heard? And it's what everybody just dropped whatever we were doing. We got down there.
It takes police less than 6 minutes to arrive at the pawn shop.
They came very quickly, and I had walked to the door with phone in hand and sister in the other, and walking by these dead bodies of people that I loved. I was petrified. I didn't know what I was looking at. And out I walk with my sister.
When I arrived at the parking lot of the pawn shop up front, our captain at the time had come to my window and said, "We need you to get these kids out of here as soon as possible. We've got bodies inside." And they put them in my vehicle, and Andrew held Naomi on the way there to the police department.
At Danville PD, we actually only have 4 full-time detectives, and we take anything from a theft to a murder. So it was a huge case, so we needed all hands on deck.
I don't care how many times you've done it or seen it, there's nothing that truly prepares you for this.
After taking the Hockenmith children safely away from the crime scene, Detective Mullins rushes back to the pawn shop to join the investigation.
When you first walk into the door, there's a counter, glass counter. Angela's body was kind of in the corner near the register. And Michael was on the other side where it looked like had been gold, some jewelry kind of laid out as if he was the one speaking to Dan at the time all this went down. And Dan, you could tell where Dan fell initially, and then someone had drug him back where it would be harder to see him.
You could see clearly the drag marks of blood leading in that direction.
and his briefcase was open on top of one of the tables.
Of course, we see tons of shell casings, but they, of course, also have a lot of guns that they're trying to sell that are within the pawn shop, ammunition that they're selling. So it really adds to the whole chaos of everything and not knowing at that point when you initially walk in what's going to be evidence.
When we go through the store, we're having to step around the blood, the shell casings, because we didn't want to step on anything like that. We had never seen anything like this.
There was so much evidence to collect and to process and to go through.
The victims had been shot multiple times, possibly after they were down. The only thing at that time that we could determine was that the spent casings appeared to be from a .22 caliber weapon.
An autopsy will later determine that Michael was shot 8 times in the legs, chest, and head. Angie was shot 3 times in the head. Dan was shot 5 times in the head.
Initially, you're thinking, okay, it's some kind of a robbery. We look at the register. There was still cash in the register.
One would speculate that the register would have been gone through for whatever money it had. So it did not appear that the motive was to rob the actual pawn shop. So that was definitely a red flag.
Obviously, as a police officer, we tried to do the best we could to get it solved as quickly as we could.
We're like, okay, what's going on? Is this more of a personal type issue going on? We're like, what do we have here? Is this something that it was a hit? Was it on Dan Smith? Was it for the Hockenmith? Was it all of them?
Police in Danville, Kentucky, investigating a triple murder, need to talk to their only eyewitness, 9-year-old Andrew Hockenmith. The frightened child and his baby sister Naomi have been taken to the police station while officers try to locate their next of kin.
Dad sat me down and was like, do you have anyone that we could contact so that way they can take you home? And I was like, I don't know, because I didn't know phone numbers. I remember being very shooken up because I was like, where am I gonna go?
And I went back to the police station and interviewed Andrew. Andrew was able to give us a good description of the bad guy.
He looked like a heavy-set dude and like a beard that didn't really look like an authentic beard.
He said, you know how at Halloween when people wear fake beards, there's little tabs?
And he had sunglasses and a cap.
And the suspect, he wore black latex gloves and camouflage coat.
Andrew also provides crucial details about the weapons used in the attack.
Andrew went in the back office, and as he's running, he could hear shots being fired. And he says they sounded different.
I remember making a sound like...
And one of our officers got his silencer, and we showed it to Andrew, and it said, did it look like this? And he said, yes, that's exactly what it was.
The use of a silencer raises frightening concerns for detectives.
The way that just the whole crime played out, I think that it definitely could be a possibility, that it could be something professional.
As detectives consider whether they are hunting for a professional hitman, word of the shooting reaches Michael Hockenmith's mother at her home across town. She rushes to the pawn shop.
When I got there, I knew I knew it was not good. I got out of the car and some of the officers met me halfway up the alley. And I said, I want to see my son. You can't. You need to go to the police station and see your grandbabies. There's nothing, no worse in this world than to lose a child. But if it hadn't been for Andrew and Naomi, I don't think I would have survived it.
Police locate the family of the third victim, Dan Smith, and break the awful news to them that same day.
I was in college, and I get this call from my stepmom, and I could tell from her voice that something was going on. And I couldn't believe what she was saying and said, what? Like, what? And I just froze. I just couldn't believe he was gone.
I just couldn't understand, what I was being told. I just couldn't comprehend.
He was such a giver, financially a giver. He was a giver of his time, his energy, his kind words.
As the victims' families try to cope with the devastating news, investigators back at the crime scene are continuing to dig for clues. They canvass the area around the pawn shop and find a promising lead.
We found a witness. He saw a heavy-set, tall, white male coming out of the pawn shop. Described him as having a beard, and he went around to the little alleyway, and there was a van that pulled out of the alleyway and turned right.
The description given was a silver minivan.
The pawn shop doesn't have a security camera, but many other businesses in the area do.
So we reviewed camera footage in the area, and we actually spotted a silver van matching that exact description passed by where the pawn shop's located. We are able to track the silver van basically through town with that video. You can just catch it, drive right by it, it matches the description perfect, right? And then right after that, we see the sliver of it pass there. So you can tell the van is circling this area and kind of waiting.
The detectives cannot make out the van's license plates, but the footage convinces them that the unidentified driver was staking out the pawn shop, or someone inside. Investigators focus on who might have been the target and why.
Well, we started looking at the Hockenmiths, who they might have had dealings with.
Of course, you find that they're just a loving, good family. No criminal history and no reason for anybody to want to harm the Hockenmiths.
Detectives also take a closer look at the Hockenmiths' business.
Steve Devine was a co-owner of the actual pawn shop in partnership with the Hockenmiths.
So we go and talk to him, and turns out he was actually supposed to be there that day.
The detectives learn that Steve Devine knew the Hockenmiths were scheduled to do a gold deal with Dan Smith that morning.
He said, but he woke up because of something with his allergies. And he called him and he told him that he wasn't going to make the meeting. So we're like, well, that's what we call a flag.
The detectives must now consider whether Steve Devine purposely avoided the pawn shop that morning because he knew what was going to happen.
It was definitely concerning that the owner of the business, who was supposed to be there, ironically just didn't show up because of allergies.
Detectives investigating a triple murder in Danville, Kentucky are looking into Steve Devine, the business partner of victim Michael Hockenmith.
He was supposed to be there and wasn't. And so we're like, What's going on here?
Steve tells police he was sick and with his wife all morning.
We were checking him out and confirm that he's telling us the truth.
His alibi clears him, but their interview with Steve provides detectives with a new direction for the investigation.
He was able to fill the little holes as to what was going on in the pawn shop.
Dan Smith was a gold buyer. So he carries a briefcase with him with a large amount of cash.
Dan Smith's wife was able to tell us that he would do a certain route on certain days of the week. So he goes to his bank, he gets the money, and then he had a lot of pawn shops that he went to.
He'd have anywhere from $30,000 to $100,000, and he went to known businesses on known days. So really anybody could have followed him and figured out where he was going to be and when.
We're thinking maybe he was the actual target, and everyone else in there was just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Investigators visit the other pawn shops where Dan did business and ask to see footage from their security cameras.
And then once we started following Dan Smith, we were able to say, boom, he was here at this time on this date, like clockwork.
So this is Dan Smith. This is a pawn shop in Lexington he goes to.
You're trying to look for anything, any odd vehicles that may be following, anyone within the store that may be paying him any particular attention, anything like that.
As they review the tapes, detectives find video from the last pawn shop Dan Smith visited before heading to the Hockenmiths.
This is where Dan Smith arrives at Lawson's Jewelers in Harrodsburg, Kentucky. Be around 8, quarter after 8, 8:20.
He walks in with that same briefcase and then talks to the lady behind the counter and just appears very relaxed, laughing, has no idea, obviously, where he's headed. I don't even think it was a full hour after this. Dan Smith was killed.
It's kind of odd when you're watching this. This is the guy's, last moments. He doesn't know it. Nobody knows what's getting ready to happen except for one person.
Investigators scour the footage for any indication of who that one person might be.
There was nobody that appeared to be paying any particular attention to him. Mind you, the video was pretty narrowly focused coming out of the one store, so we couldn't see his full motions once he crossed the street. But reviewing that video at the time, there was nothing that stood out.
We really were kind of baffled at this point. Who was even the target?
4 days into the investigation, there's no clear target, no clear motive, and nothing pointing to the identity of the gunman described by 9-year-old Andrew Hockenmith.
We were getting ready to figure out what our next step was, and this phone call came in to the police department from Michigan. And we're like, Michigan, now what do we have here?
The caller from Michigan identifies himself as a pastor. He tells police about someone in the Kentucky area who knew the victims and has been making suspicious comments.
The pastor from Michigan relayed that he was friends with an individual by the name of Kenneth Allen Keith, and that he had communicated with Kenneth Allen Keith and got on the subject about the murders in Danville.
The pastor explained that Kenneth Allen Keith knew the Hockenmiths, and that Kenneth Allen said, talking about the Hockenmiths, that they're not innocent either.
This pastor had said Mr. Keith just switched like a light switch, that something set him off. And he said that they had cost him a lot of money.
And so I think that statement alone really stood out to him because, I mean, you look at they are innocent people, right? He's concerned that potentially his friend, Kenneth Allen Keith, could be involved in this triple homicide. The call was what kind of turned the whole investigation around when we realized that it could be the Hockenmiths that were actually targeted.
Four days after the murders of Michael and Angie Hockenmith and Dan Smith, police learned that a man named Kenneth Allen Keith has been making suspicious comments about the Hockenmiths.
Once Kenneth Allen's name was mentioned, we started looking, okay, who is this guy?
He was involved in the pawn shop business. He had one in Somerset, Kentucky. And he was a pastor of a small town church in Pulaski County, Kentucky. He appeared to be loved by his local congregation.
That was kind of a common denominator for everybody involved, as they were all heavily into the church, either as pastors, ministers, leaders, just in a church.
But the investigators quickly discover that Kenneth Allen Keith appears to have a different style of preaching than the other pastors.
We found one of his sermons that he had on YouTube where he's on the pulpit and he's got a rifle with a sling on. And he's talking about his past, what he's done. And we're like, okay, we have a sniper here. And the further that we looked into Kenneth Allen, the more we're like, oh, this is a good lead.
So when we start looking into Kenneth Allen Keith, we look into his financial history. And we learned that he had recently been sued by Steve Devine. And so he owed Steve Devine money.
Police learned that Steve Devine, the co-owner of the pawn shop with Michael and Angie, had been in business with Kenneth Allen Keith before putting the Hockenmiths in charge 4 months earlier. Prior to that, the Hockenmiths had actually been Kenneth Allen Keith's employees.
Kenneth felt cheated. He felt that that pawn shop should have been his. And that Steve Devine and the Hockenmiths basically stole it right out underneath his feet.
So we felt that would be a good motive. That would make someone upset. Upset enough to kill someone? We didn't really know the personality or what was really within Kenneth Allen Keith at that time.
But as they dig deeper into Kenneth Allen Keith, detectives uncover what could be another crucial link between him and the murders.
It ended up that there was a silver/gray minivan that was registered and associated with him.
The same kind of vehicle seen on surveillance video speeding away from the crime scene. While all of the evidence is starting to align around Kenneth Allen Keith, investigators know everything they have is only circumstantial. To help them build a more solid case, they reach out to the pastor in Michigan who initially tipped them off to Kenneth and recruit him to help their investigation.
At this point, we want a step further, so arrangements are made to actually record phone calls.
On October 9th, 2013, the Michigan pastor calls Kenneth Allen Keith while the police listen in to see if he says anything incriminating.
When somebody's being murdered in such a heinous way as what this was, you want to make them, out to be saints. I understand that. Mm-hmm. But between you and me, brother, they were crooked people.
Is that right?
They went into it with the whole point from day one to take over that business from me. I don't mean to speak ill.
No, hey, man.
Facts are facts.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. I can't tell nobody none of this because what does it make me look like?
Yeah.
It makes me look like the perpetrator, see?
And during that phone call, he was able to kind of go over what he was doing that day, what his location was, how he wasn't involved.
I was in Danville, but I was at the pharmacy. I'm standing in the pharmacy while all this happened.
We took that information and looked at the video surveillance, and we found that moments after the 911 call, Kenneth Allen Keith was entering the pharmacy in Danville. The timestamps from video gave us the indications on when it occurred, and from the pawn shop to the pharmacy, that was a doable time.
He was actually here at a local pharmacy just within minutes of the time of the murder, which we thought was unusual, to travel basically an hour to pick up a prescription when you have local pharmacies in your local community.
The detectives have no doubt. They are watching Kenneth Allen Keith just moments after committing a triple homicide.
Watching him and knowing that he had just killed 3 people, it's hard to fathom how somebody can just, take somebody's life and then act like it was nothing.
10 days after the murders, police believe they finally have enough to arrest Kenneth Allen Keith. Now, they need to track him down.
We tracked his phone, and we were able to actually see that he had went to Florida.
And when we knew he was on his way back, we were setting up our game plan, what we were going to do, that we were going to have a search warrant at the church, a search warrant at the home where he lived with his family, and a search warrant at the pawn shop in Somerset, Kentucky. And that's when we make our move.
October 9th, 2013. Danville, Kentucky police are waiting as Kenneth Allen Keith, the prime suspect in the murder of Michael and Angie Hockenmith and Dan Smith, returns home from a trip to Florida.
He gets up the next morning from coming home, and he goes to his pawn shop. And that's when we make our move. An investigator went in as a potential customer and made contact with Mr. Allen. We didn't go in with guns drawn, anything like that, because pawn shops have guns in them, and we don't know where what is. And he came out from his office area, and they were able to basically tell him, we've got a search warrant for your pawn shop.
As police search his business, Kenneth Allen Keith is placed under arrest.
During the search of the pawn shop, we discovered a box for a threaded device that can be purchased over the internet that can be fashioned into a makeshift silencer.
The discovery confirms detectives' suspicions that a silencer was used in the killings and explains Andrew Hockenmith's description of a high-pitched sound as his parents were shot.
And then also outside of the business, we found spent .22 shell casings and then a target that had been shot. So we believe that he was practicing prior to the shooting.
The .22 casings found in Kenneth Keith's pawn shop matched all the expended shell casings from the murder scene in Danville, Kentucky. They were shot from the identical weapon.
There was evidence, obviously, that tied him to this case to make it a strong case.
Detectives confront Kenneth Allen Keith with the overwhelming evidence.
We are always trying to get an outright confession, but that did not happen.
We got the opinion that Mr. Allen thought that he was just so intelligent that he was going to beat all this, but he didn't know what we had found.
News of the arrest shocks Dan Smith's family. They know Kenneth Allen Keith and believed he was a good pastor and a friend.
Dad had a previous relationship with Kenneth Allen Keith. He would come in and he would buy and sell. They did business. You're going, wait a minute. That's not a real pastor. But to be able to commit murders on Friday and then get up on the pulpit Sunday morning and preach, especially in front of 2 children.
For Andrew Hockenmith, who hid for his life with his baby sister during the murders of his parents, the news comes as a relief.
I remember they was like, hey, Andrew, look at this, look at the news. And they showed me the newscast where they finally caught him. I was like, all right.
Prosecutor Richie Bottoms believes he has all he needs to convict Kenneth Allen Keith on 3 counts of first-degree homicide.
I think the evidence spoke for itself. We felt very confident that we could convince the jury that he did this.
After initially announcing they would seek the death penalty, prosecutors decide to spare Andrew and his baby sister Naomi and Dan Smith's family the pain of a long trial. Instead, they offer Kenneth Allen Keith life without parole in exchange for a guilty plea.
We all come out on the short end of the stick, but that's okay. I don't have to answer for what he did. The man's going to have his own demons he's going to have to live with.
I want people to remember who our dad was. I want him to be remembered by the good things that he did for people. He was a very kind man, and he wanted to help. He wanted to help people, and he did.
I've been told you're a spitting image of your dad, and you look just like him, you act just like him. And my mom, I think Naomi, she looks just like my mom. I'm very thankful for what I have. And in a sense, it's like I am like living through my parents' life, or kind of like a reimagined one. My parents will always live on within me.
Thì giờ con tiền ở phía trước. Thì ngày xưa là thế mà. Ngày xưa cũng là thế. Con cắt phim đi để lại tầm 10 phút cuối của phim đúng không? Đúng, còn cái đuôi tờ giấy tháng này. Xóa gì anh cần biết là có khôi phục được hay không. Chỉ cần là khôi phục được là trước sau thì đều được. Cái nó mờ cũ nó lúc cái đi thì cũng không. không? Được cái đấy. Lách à? Đưa qua cho bạn. Từ đó không lách. Không lách. Một cái lách rồi. Không. Đấy, không lách. Không muốn là đấy là đấy thôi. Nó kiểu nó gió ma gió khí nó rung lên ấy. À, ngon phết đấy. Ngon không? Ngon không? Học từ chỗ. Đây, trong 25 đây này. Cháy hết rồi. Canada. Độ đấy lạnh lắm kì. Nách hay sao ấy? Tập nách hay sao này?